I never imagined that one simple evening at home could change the way I looked at my daughter forever. You know, as mothers, we like to believe we understand our children better than anyone else. From the moment they're born, we study their faces, learn their little habits, and tell ourselves we can read every expression, every mood, every silence. I thought I knew her heart completely. I thought I could always predict what she was feeling, even before she said a word. But I was wrong. That evening began like so many others. The house smelled faintly of the dinner I had just cooked, her favorite pasta, something I thought would put her in a good mood. She had been quiet all day, spending most of her time in her room, and I told myself she was probably just tired from school. Teenagers go through phases, I reminded myself. Don't push, just give her space. But deep down, a mother always feels when something is off. I remember standing by the kitchen sink, listening to the faint hum of the dishwasher, waiting for her to come down. My heart was already a little heavy, but I couldn't explain why. When she finally walked into the room, she didn't even look at me. Her eyes were red, and her shoulders were tense, as if she was carrying some invisible weight. I smiled at her, gentle, patient, the way mothers do when they want to say, "I'm here for you whenever you're ready." But instead of softening, she hardened. She avoided my gaze and moved past me quickly, like I was a stranger in her own home. That small gesture, so sharp, so deliberate, cut me deeper than I'd like to admit. I told myself not to overreact, that she was just in one of those moods. So I tried, carefully, to ask about her day. And then it happened. She turned to me suddenly, her lips trembling, but her voice steady enough to wound. She leaned in closer, almost whispering, as if the words were too heavy to say out loud, and yet too powerful to keep inside. "I hate you." Just 3 words, 3 tiny words that pierced through every layer of my being. It was not the loud, angry outburst of a child throwing a tantrum. No, it was quiet, intentional, as if she had been holding it inside for far too long, and now it finally slipped free like poison. I froze. My mind raced through 1,000 memories at once, her first steps, her laughter echoing through the playground, the way she used to cling to my hand whenever she felt shy. How could the same little girl, who once thought I was her entire world, now look me in the eyes and whisper those words? In that moment, the kitchen no longer felt like our home. It felt like a battlefield. A line had been drawn, and I didn't even understand why. All I knew was that something between us had shattered. And instead of fighting back, instead of demanding an explanation, I did the only thing I could. I stayed silent. I didn't answer her. Not right away. The words, "I hate you," were still echoing inside my chest, like someone had slammed a heavy door and left me standing on the wrong side. I had always thought I'd be ready for any storm that came with raising a teenager, the mood swings, the slammed doors, the eye rolls, but nothing prepares you for those 3 words. They don't just sting. They linger. They replay over and over in your head. So I chose silence. I simply turned away. My feet moved before my heart caught up, and I walked out of the kitchen without a word. To this day, I don't know if that was strength or cowardice. The hallway felt longer than ever, as if each step carried the weight of 15 years of motherhood pressing down on me. I remember brushing my hand along the wallpaper, feeling its tiny ridges under my fingertips, grounding myself, reminding myself that I was still here, still real, even if, at that moment, I felt like I'd disappeared in her eyes. When I reached the living room, I didn't switch on the lights. I sat on the couch in the dark, the glow of the street lamp outside casting pale stripes through the blinds. The silence was suffocating. I could hear every sound in the house, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock on the wall, and upstairs, the muffled sound of her door closing. I folded my arms tightly across my chest, as if holding myself together, and I thought about everything I wanted to say. "You don't mean that. You're angry now, but it will pass. Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed for you? But none of those words felt right. They were all about me, my pain, my pride. And somewhere inside, I knew this wasn't about me. Not entirely. Time dragged. Minutes felt like hours. I tried to distract myself, but every little thing reminded me of her. On the coffee table lay a half-finished puzzle we'd started together weeks ago, the pieces still scattered. On the shelf was a picture of her in second grade, missing her front teeth, grinning like the world belonged to her. And there I was, sitting in the dark, wondering how we'd drifted so far apart. I thought about her life, the pressures she must feel, the silent battles I couldn't see. School, friendships, the endless comparisons on social media. Maybe her words weren't truly about me, but about everything she couldn't control. Maybe I had just become the easiest target. Still, the ache didn't go away. I sat there for over an hour, listening, waiting. I thought I heard her footsteps once, but it was only the floorboards settling. Eventually, the tears came, quietly, without warning. I wiped them away quickly, almost ashamed, as if crying made me weak. And yet, through all of that, I made a choice. I would not be the first to break the silence. If she needed space to realize what those words meant, I had to let her feel the weight of them, even if it broke me in the process. That was the night I learned that sometimes love isn't about holding tighter, it's about letting go, just long enough for them to find their way back. The hours that followed felt like a punishment I wasn't sure I deserved. I sat in that living room, surrounded by shadows, listening to the silence that had replaced the bond I thought I had with my daughter. The clock on the wall became my enemy. Each tick was louder than the last, reminding me of how long I'd been sitting there, waiting for something, anything to change. Eventually, I got up and moved to the kitchen again, not because I was hungry, but because I needed to keep my hands busy. I opened cupboards, rearranged glasses, wiped down a counter that was already clean. Anything to distract my mind. But no matter what I did, my thoughts circled back to her. Upstairs, her door was closed. Behind that thin piece of wood was the girl I had raised, the girl who once needed me for everything. And yet, that door now felt like a wall I couldn't climb. I thought about knocking, about walking in and forcing a conversation. But something inside me whispered, "Wait. Just wait." And so, I did. To keep myself grounded, I started replaying old memories in my head. I remembered the day she learned to ride her bike, the way her small hands gripped the handlebars while I ran behind her, breathless but determined not to let go too soon. I remembered the time she was 8 and got stage fright before a school play. She clung to me backstage, trembling, until I whispered that she was brave enough to do anything. And she did. She went out there and sang louder than anyone else. So how did we end up here? What had I missed? The house seemed to know something was wrong. The air felt heavier, like the weight of unsaid words hung between us, filling the rooms, pressing on my chest. At one point, I thought I heard her crying, but when I paused to listen, the sound faded into silence. Maybe it was my imagination, or maybe it was her trying to muffle the storm inside her. I poured myself a cup of tea I didn't want. The steam fogged my glasses, and for a moment, I stared into the swirling liquid as though it could give me answers. Was I too strict? Too distant? Too much of something? Not enough of something else? Guilt started creeping in, like it always does with mothers. We carry every word, every mistake, like a stone in our pockets. And those 3 words, "I hate you," felt like a boulder I could never put down. At one point, I walked past the staircase and found myself standing there, staring up at the landing where her door was. The hallway light was off, and the silence up there felt heavier than the dark. My hand brushed against the banister, and for a moment I considered climbing the steps, opening her door, and holding her until the storm passed. But I stayed where I was, because sometimes the hardest thing a mother can do is nothing at all. I went back to the couch, wrapped a blanket around myself, and waited. The night stretched on endlessly, but somewhere deep inside, I knew. This silence wouldn't last forever. Something was coming, and when it did, neither of us would ever forget it. The night seemed endless. Every time I thought about going to bed, I couldn't. Something inside me wouldn't let me leave the silence between us unresolved. So I stayed there, curled under a blanket on the couch, staring at the faint light of the street lamp cutting through the blinds. My body was exhausted, but my mind kept spinning in circles. I tried to read, but the book lay unopened on my lap. I tried to watch TV, but the sound felt unbearable, too loud for the fragile quiet of the house. It was as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting, just like me. At some point, I realized how still everything had become. No footsteps upstairs, no drawers opening or closing, not even the faint hum of her music seeping through the door, like it usually did. Just silence. Too much silence. It wrapped around me, pressing against my skin, amplifying every anxious thought in my head. I glanced at the clock again, just past midnight. She hadn't come down for food, hadn't spoken a single word since those 3 that broke me. I hate you. For a moment, panic began to set in. What if she wasn't just angry? What if something was truly wrong? My heart began to pound as I imagined the worst. Parents do that. We leap to the darkest possibilities because we know how fragile everything really is. I thought about how, just days earlier, I had read an article about teenage depression. The statistics clung to me now, whispering in the dark, feeding my fear. I stood up, half ready to rush upstairs, to open her door no matter what, but I froze. And then I heard it. At first, I wasn't sure. It was faint, almost like the house itself was sighing, but then it came again, clearer this time. A muffled sob. My breath caught in my chest. She was crying. I stood completely still, straining to hear. The sound came in waves, broken gasps, then silence, then another trembling sob she couldn't contain. It was the sound of someone's heart cracking open. My daughter, the one who had whispered such cruel words hours ago, was crying alone in her room. 1,000 instincts surged through me at once. I wanted to run up the stairs, throw open her door, and gather her in my arms like when she was little. I wanted to tell her she didn't need to be alone in her pain, that I was still her safe place, but something stopped me. Maybe it was pride, maybe fear, or just maybe it was wisdom. I knew if I rushed in now, if I tried to fix everything too quickly, it might only push her further away. She had to let herself feel it. She had to choose to reach out. So I stayed where I was, standing at the bottom of the stairs, tears stinging my own eyes as I listened to the sound of her crying above me. And in that moment, as painful as it was, I understood. Sometimes love means waiting in the shadows, even when every part of you aches to step into the light. Something was shifting. I could feel it. The silence was breaking. The crying went on for what felt like forever. Sometimes it grew louder, raw and unrestrained, and then it quieted, as if she was trying to hold it back. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, torn between 2 impulses: rush to her or give her space. In the end, I sat back down, my hands trembling, my ears tuned to every sound from above. And then it happened. I heard her door creak open. Just a tiny sound, but it sliced through the silence like thunder. My heart jumped. I didn't move, afraid she'd retreat if she sensed me waiting. Her footsteps were slow, hesitant, like someone testing whether the ground would hold. Each step down the stairs echoed in my chest. When she appeared at the edge of the living room, my breath caught. Her face was blotchy from crying, her hair messy, her eyes swollen and red. She looked so small in that moment, so much smaller than the angry, defiant teenager who had whispered those words to me earlier. But her pride was still there. I could see it in the way she crossed her arms, in the tilt of her chin. She didn't come running to me. She didn't collapse into my arms. Instead, she stood a few feet away, staring at the floor. "I didn't mean it," she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. My throat tightened. Those words should have been enough, but something inside me knew not to grab onto them too quickly. Not yet. I waited. She shifted uncomfortably, still not looking at me. I mean, maybe I did mean it, but not like that. Her voice broke, and she swallowed hard. "You don't get it. You never get it." There it was, the wall between us, still standing. My instinct was to defend myself, to remind her of everything I'd done, everything I'd given. But I bit back the words. This wasn't about proving myself right. "You're right," I said quietly. "Maybe I don't get it, but I want to." That made her look at me, really look at me. Her eyes filled with fresh tears, and for a second, I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who used to crawl into my bed after a nightmare. "I just feel like I'm drowning all the time," she whispered. "And when you talk to me, it's like you don't hear me. You just tell me what to do, and I hate it. I hate feeling invisible." The words pierced me deeper than her earlier "I hate you." Because this time, they weren't meant to hurt, they were the truth. I leaned forward, my own voice trembling. "I hear you now." For a moment, silence stretched between us again. But it wasn't the cold, punishing silence from before. This was different, softer, fragile. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, still stubborn, still guarded. But she didn't leave. She stayed. And sometimes, staying is the first step back. We sat on the couch together, the blanket still draped over both of us, though neither of us made a move to pull it tighter. The room felt small, intimate, yet full of unspoken words. The clock ticked quietly in the background, each second a reminder of how long we had waited to reach this point. "I don't even know where to start," she muttered, staring at her knees. Her fingers twisted the edge of the blanket, like it could somehow anchor her in the storm of her emotions. "Then don't start," I said softly. "Just talk. Say whatever comes to your mind." She shook her head. "It's everything. School, friends, expectations. You too." Her eyes flicked up to mine, searching, accusing, but vulnerable. "You think I don't try, that I'm just being dramatic, but I can't. I can't handle it all." I swallowed. I had tried to understand before, but hearing it now, hearing the rawness, the weight of her words, it hit me differently. "I didn't know it felt like that," I admitted. "I didn't mean to make it harder." Her laugh was bitter, broken. "Of course you didn't. You never see it until it explodes." "Until I explode." She buried her face in her hands for a moment, trembling. "I hate that I hurt you. I hate that I feel like this." I reached out, my hand hovering, unsure if she would pull away. But she didn't. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she let me touch her arm. I don't want to be the problem anymore." "You're not the problem," I said firmly. "You never were, and you don't have to face it alone." There was a long pause. She lifted her head, her eyes red but glimmering with something softer now, maybe trust, maybe relief. I just feel trapped sometimes, like no one understands, and I get so mad. And then I say things I don't mean." I nodded. "I know. I've felt the same sometimes. And you saying those things, it doesn't change how much I love you. It doesn't change that I'm here. Always." Her lips quivered, a tiny, hesitant smile breaking through. "Always?" "Always," I whispered, the word carrying more weight than any I'd spoken all night. She leaned into me, cautiously, like testing if it was safe. I don't know if I can explain everything yet, but I want to try. That's enough for now, I said. Just trying. That's all I need. The night stretched on, and we didn't rush. Words came in fits and starts, emotions spilling over, then retreating, then surging again. We laughed nervously at small things. We cried quietly, and in between, there was silence. But this time, it was comfortable, a pause to breathe, to absorb, to begin healing. I realized then that this was the first real conversation we had in weeks, maybe months. And it wasn't perfect, it wasn't smooth, but it was ours. Sometimes the hardest talks are the most necessary. The first hint of morning light filtered through the blinds, softening the edges of the room. We had talked through the night, our words scattered, jagged, sometimes overlapping, but always reaching toward understanding. Now, in the quiet, a new kind of tension hung in the air, the kind that precedes confession, the kind that forces the heart to open. She began, her voice shaky. She stopped, swallowed, and tried again. I'm really sorry for saying those things, for hurting you. I didn't mean it, not really. I could see the tremble in her hands, the way her shoulders hunched as if trying to make herself smaller. Every word she spoke felt like a step into the light, a surrender of her anger, her pride. It's okay, I said softly, though my heart ached from the weight of her guilt. I know you didn't mean it, and even if you did, I still love you. You can never break that. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't just sadness. They were relief, a release she had been holding on to for too long. She looked at me, searching, vulnerable. You really mean that? I nodded, reaching out to cup her cheek. I mean it more than anything. You're my daughter. Nothing you say or feel can ever change that. For a moment, she hesitated, then slowly leaned into my touch, resting her forehead against mine. Her body shook, a mix of relief and lingering fear, and I held her as tightly as I could without smothering her, letting her know that here, in this room, she was safe. I've been so angry, she whispered. Not just at you, at everything. I thought I had to carry it all alone, and then I lashed out at you. I didn't know how else to. I don't know. Cope. I understand, I said, stroking her hair. Life feels impossible sometimes, but you don't have to face it alone. Ever. You're not alone. You'll never be alone. She pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes, a small, tentative smile forming. I don't want to hurt you anymore. I don't want to feel this way anymore. You won't, I whispered. Not with me. We'll figure it out together. She took a deep breath, as if finally letting go of something she had carried too long. I'm sorry, she said again, simpler this time, but this time truly meaning it. I forgive you, I replied, my voice steady, full of love that needed no words beyond that. And I'm proud of you for facing it, for talking to me, for being brave enough to show me how you feel. Her shoulders relaxed for the first time in hours, and a tiny laugh escaped her, shaky but real. It was a sound that hadn't been heard in a long time, a sound of healing beginning. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Love isn't about never breaking. It's about staying, about holding on, about choosing each other again and again, even when it's hard. For the first time in what felt like forever, we were on the same side, together, always. The morning stretched lazily into afternoon. Sunlight spilled across the living room, catching the dust motes in the air, but it felt warmer now, brighter, as if the house itself had softened. The tension from the previous night still lingered, but it was lighter, like the weight had been shifted, redistributed into something bearable. She came into the kitchen, quietly, like she was testing the waters. "Do you want some coffee?" she asked, her voice still tentative, almost shy. I smiled. "Yes, please." It was such a small exchange, but it felt monumental. A bridge was being built from gestures rather than words. We moved through the morning carefully, each step measured, each glance holding a silent acknowledgement. We were still fragile, still healing, but willing. Later, she came to me with a notebook in her hands. I wrote something last night," she said, avoiding my eyes. "Do you want to read it?" I nodded, and she handed it over. I could see her nervousness in the slight tremor of her fingers. As I read, I realized it wasn't just a story. It was a window into her mind, her fears, her anger, her hopes. She had poured everything onto the pages. "This is beautiful," I said, my voice thick. "You're amazing at expressing yourself. Thank you for sharing this with me." A small smile appeared on her lips, the kind of smile that had been missing for too long. "You actually like it?" she whispered, almost in disbelief. "I love it," I said, "and I love you." It was moments like these that began to reconstruct the trust between us. Not grand gestures or dramatic apologies, but quiet affirmations, listening without judgment, showing up even when it was uncomfortable. By evening, we were cooking dinner together. She chopped vegetables while I stirred the sauce. The air was filled with the sound of sizzling, the smell of garlic and onions, and for the first time in days, the kitchen felt like a safe place, a haven. "You know," she said, pausing to look at me, "I feel lighter. Just talking to you, I mean. I didn't think it would feel like this." I smiled, squeezing her hand briefly. "It's a start. We take it one step at a time." We ate in quiet companionship, sharing small laughs and stories from the day. No forced words, no heavy confessions, just presence. And that was enough. Later, before bedtime, she came to my room and hugged me tightly. "Thanks for not giving up on me," she whispered. "You could never make me give up on you," I replied. And in that hug, I realized something vital. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. It grows in small moments, in repeated acts of love, patience, and understanding. Each day, each shared laugh or tear becomes a brick in the bridge back to each other. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet, persistent, and invisible, but it is no less powerful. Step by step. It was a quiet evening, the kind where everything seems normal on the surface. I thought we had found our rhythm, the soft rebuilding of trust, the small reassuring gestures. But life, as always, has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. She slammed the bedroom door behind her. The sound echoed sharply, cutting through the calm like a warning. I froze in the living room, my heart tightening. I knew that tone. It was familiar, the raw edge of frustration I had heard before. "Why do you always have to tell me what to do?" she shouted, her voice trembling. "I'm not a kid anymore. I can handle things my way." I felt the sting of those words, but I held my ground. "I'm not trying to control you," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I just want to help, like I always have." Her eyes blazed with anger, tears glimmering at the corners. "Help? You call it help, but it feels like judgment, like I'm never good enough, no matter what I do." I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was part of the process. Trust doesn't mean perfection, and reconciliation doesn't erase old pain overnight. "I understand you feel that way," I said softly, "but yelling at me won't fix it. Talk to me, please." For a moment, she looked at me, her chest heaving, as if considering whether to storm out. Then, unexpectedly, she collapsed onto her bed, curling into herself. "I'm sorry," she whispered, almost inaudible. I just, I don't know how to do this right. I walked over slowly, sitting at the edge of her bed. You don't have to do it perfectly, I said gently. We're learning together, and even when it's messy, I'm not going anywhere. She buried her face in her hands, muffling her sobs. It's not just you, it's me. I get angry at everything. I hate that I can't control it. I know, I said, and it's okay to be angry. We all feel that way sometimes, but it's what we do with it that matters. Her shoulders trembled as she took a shaky breath. I don't want to hurt you again, she whispered. You won't, I reassured her, placing a hand over hers. We'll work through it, step by step, like always. You're not alone in this. She peeked at me through her fingers, eyes red but softer than before. You really mean that? I do, I said firmly, more than anything. The tension lingered, but the spark of connection remained. And in that moment, I realized that conflicts don't undo progress. They test it. Each challenge we face together strengthens the bond we've begun to rebuild, as long as we face it with honesty and love. Tonight, the fight had come, and tonight, we survived it together. Stronger together. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, painting the room in soft gold. For the first time in weeks, the house felt truly calm. We moved around each other with ease, no tension, no lingering shadows from past arguments. There was a quiet sense of completion, like the air itself had been cleansed. She came to the kitchen, barefoot, her hair messy, but her eyes bright. Mom, she said softly, do you want to go for a walk? I smiled, sensing the new rhythm between us, the understanding that words alone weren't enough, that actions and shared moments mattered. I'd love that, I replied. Outside, the world felt alive. The birds sang, the breeze carried the scent of flowers, and the city stirred quietly around us. We walked side by side, our hands brushing occasionally, each touch a reaffirmation of the bond we had rebuilt. You know, she said, glancing at me, I've been thinking about last night, and all the nights before, about how angry I was and how scared I felt. I'm sorry for everything, the words, the silence, the storms I brought into this house. I reached for her hand and held it gently. You don't have to apologize anymore, I said. You've faced it, we've talked, and we're still here. That's what matters. That's what love is, showing up even when it's hard. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. But it wasn't sadness. It was relief, gratitude, and a newfound peace. I feel different, she admitted. Like I can finally breathe. Like I'm not alone. You're never alone, I whispered. Not for a second. I'll always be here, and now. We understand each other better than ever. We walked in silence for a while, letting the warmth of the sun and the soft rhythm of our steps fill the spaces where tension once lived. The air felt lighter, the world softer, as if acknowledging our healing. Then she stopped, turning to face me fully. Thank you, she said, her voice steady, sincere. For loving me, even when I was impossible, for listening, for forgiving, for not giving up. I pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. Thank you for trusting me, for letting me in, for being brave enough to change. For the first time, our bond felt unshakable, not because everything was perfect, but because we had survived the storms together. We had argued, we had cried, we had hurt each other, but we had also healed, laughed, and found our way back. We parted slightly, looking at each other with a shared understanding that words could hardly capture. This was more than reconciliation. It was transformation. And as we continued walking, hand in hand, I knew that no matter what came next, we would face it together. Stronger, wiser, and connected in a way that nothing could break. Love endures. Always.